You got like automatic
Thank you.
people coming in.
Okay. I will let you do that. I'm trying to get a smaller.
Sure. Got it? Okay. Here, I'm gonna scooch this over a little bit for you. Let's move it back a bit.
Oh, sorry. I found one right there.
We also need, though, where's that little, this here?
Owl?
Yeah, cause then, cause. Cause then they can hear you and see you. This should be plugged into.
Thank you for those of you joining us on Zoom. We're just getting set up.
Right here. Tracks.
How do you do that? I don't host tools. You have disabled the waiting room,
Yes.
which means they can just get in, right?
Sure, please.
Yeah. Okay, for those of you at home, can you see our screen? Oh, here we go, but I need the screen share. And you can hear us? Uh-oh, that doesn't look good.
You gotta go into your systems, yeah, and allow it.
Gonna make me end the meeting.
No, just leave meeting and then you log back in. Oh, no.
Here, let me log in. Let me get in. Oh, I thought it's like my least proficiency.
Yeah, then she'll no log in so we can assign it to the, and then we'll log in.
Hi.
Morning.
Hi, good morning.
Is it afternoon, I suppose?
Is it?
Well, it's 11.
I haven't had to get back in.
No, I need to assign it to someone, so will you?
Yeah, I'm logging in, right? Just me. Okay.
I think this will work. Where it was.
That's about one
Yeah, but
Oh.
do you have the
thing pulled up.
the file?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
I was just gonna log into.
You guys are not muted, just so you know.
Oh, 11.
Thanks.
For those of you on Zoom, can you, my screen sharing? No. No.
Yeah. What's the best album? Gotta do something, man. What's the best album? I don't know, man. No, I'm still trying to figure that out. Yeah. Everybody says, don't do them in the mornings, but then don't do them during Vikings games. What? You're not gonna do it at 4 o'clock?
Oh, open?
On Sunday.
Yeah.
It's like,
There's no rhyme or reason.
you got, yeah, usually I'm 11 to 10 on Sundays, or 11 to 1. 11 to
You gotta do these sports catch you. Yeah, do they show up? Do you show up?
yeah, for the first hour. And then from like 12 to 1, it was dead, so but it was like, I'm thinking at least 11 to 1, it's like after the church rush, but maybe a little bit before the game.
Cause this will show everything we just.
Yeah, we did two.
So, good, so you did 2 yesterday?
We did. First one, no one. Second
Yes.
one, great. Second one was from 2 to 4.
Yeah.
Then it's Minneapolis, but they were busy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. I did one last week, last week or 2 weeks, ago, 2 to 4, it was. What?
Yeah, I used to do Thursday and then Friday.
There's open.
You want me to show them what's
I've
up?
never
Yeah.
tried one during the day. I've done some Thursday and Fridays, nice. True, yeah, yeah,
Yes, we know.
And they got, those are condos.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's all about just.
M&Ms are here.
Some are gonna have nobody to them, and some are gonna have too many people show up. So it's just. It's gonna be, try to find the right price points, right house. Maybe we'll insinuate.
Oh, I just trying to do my calls.
Yeah, exactly, just trying to make like. Okay, so I can.
It's now, though. I agree.
Yeah. Manifesting people coming in.
No.
Well, while you're on your call, yeah, I'm actually no mouse, we're gonna swing by.
You guys doing good? Ready to rock? I know. Sure. Stuck here.
Yeah.
Boxes are.
Where's the camera? Is it just? Good, it's still morning. Someone tried to give us a good afternoon here today. I said, nay. It's still morning.
What? Yep, I see it.
Nope. So we are talking this morning a little bit about the listing contract. The goal here is probably just to right now to talk about a form that created by the Association of Realtors that we've used for a long time. Not ideal, not perfect. We're working on something better, but before we kind of go, we're gonna maybe crawl before we walk here. And specifically, I'm talking about the NAR changes and the way that commission is sort of talked about in this document. But so we'll get to that, but bigger picture. But I think we just want to go over the form a little bit with you all, just to get you a little bit more comfortable with using this legal document. Certainly want to answer any questions if you have any, if you run any kind of issues. But Cassie and I to start are just going to kind of run through the form itself, just to again, as you're completing this to understand how we talk to this with our clients. I realize a lot of the times you're already probably pre-populated a lot of this stuff when you're going into listing presentations anyway. So it's more of a show and tell, kind of put in front of a client and explain it as you're going through.
Especially if you're using Flip. So our goal today is just to make sure that you understand the listing agreement, what's in it, how to present it to your client. Make sure you're properly completing it, especially if you come from a different brokerage. People can kind of be all over with this. And then to Ed's point, making sure that you're filling it out the way we at Pemberton would like you to fill it out from a commission standpoint to align with the NAR settlement.
Right. So, starting off the beginning preamble section or the property contract section. I know this stuff is probably just a lot of times auto fed to you just by whatever your, the data fields you're typing in when you fill it out. And that's fine. Most parcels of real estate that are in the MLS are generally accurate. So we can take this a lot of times for what it is, but I would just point that out and say there are times where it's a property that's in the middle of a subdivision, or we know that it's kind of a wonky parcel, or they're selling two parcels together. There are times where the transaction itself is, you know, whatever that is in the, like the tax records or whatever is in the MLS may not be accurate. And those are the opportunities where you just have to say, okay, I can't just rely on the auto data feeds. I have to go in manually and put this in. And obviously those are, if those are the transactions where you recognize that, you'll talk to one of us. We'll happily help you fill this in. But you know, the easy button answer of when it gets automatically filled in or the legal description doesn't always auto-populate correctly. So just kind of bearing that in mind. Fill in the broker from, since the transition has occurred, everything of course should be transferred over. We shouldn't have any former brokers on any of these agreements any longer. And then term, contract starts on and ends, you know, at a certain date. Reminder, under Minnesota law, our agency contracts, listing contracts, buyer rep agreements, you can have as long a term as you want, as long as it's got an end date. Number one, can't be forever. And number two, what's that?
Let's assign them at 10 years.
Yeah. And number two, it can't auto renew. And that's a Minnesota statute. So if you want to do 6 months, you can do 6 months, but then you have to re-up it. You can't put a clause in there that says after 6 months, it just auto renews or whatever. So again, I don't know who, and I think sometimes this comes from like pre-licensing school or some of these other things where people think like, I've talked to many experienced agents over the years. They're like, I had no idea you could do a 3 month or a 3 year listing contract. Like, no, you absolutely can. Right? If it's a complicated transaction, if it's going to be a difficult sale, commercial real estate is often conducted that way because it's a long game. So the idea here, I think, don't be afraid of this. This is when you're talking with the client this is my commitment to you. Right? I will work for you for as long as it takes to sell your property, whether that's 6 months or 6 years, right? That's my commitment to you. Obviously, the longer, you know, it is a longer commitment. If you think it's going to take 6 years to sell that thing, I mean, buckle up, right? But the idea here is that's the bargain that the client is receiving because you are not working them by hourly. You're not charging them along the way. You are getting paid at the end. And you're basically saying, I will commit to you for as long as it, you know, it needs to. So I wouldn't ever be afraid of a longer listing agreement. I know the goal is to sell it quickly, or that's typically what the seller wants, right? But generally speaking, that's what's one of the main benefits that the client is actually receiving is a longer term. So don't, you know, necessarily be afraid of that.
Also, expiration dates, people do it one of two ways. Some do it from like, you do 6 months from the date you sign it, right? But some agents will just end it on like the last day of the month, you know, for however many months, because then they know on that day, every month, all of their listings are about to expire and they've got to deal with them like that week. So that's kind of a smart way to do it as well, if you've not utilized that method. So people do it kind of two different ways.
And also, we know a separate form from this is like the withhold from MLS form. If you just strictly sign this contract and basically nothing else, that would mean that the client is signing and going active right away, right? Because you have 2 business days to notify the MLS when you have an active listing after you sign this document, right? Many people that I've worked with in the past, different brokers, something like that, they would take a more hands-off approach and they just kind of say, well, we'll sign a listing contract when you're ready to go. Because for whatever reason they didn't like the withhold from MLS forms, they didn't care from that or whatever. It's kind of I don't know if they call it an old school mentality. I think it was a little short-sighted mentality, maybe a little lazy, but the idea was, well, I'll just come over when you're ready to list, when you're ready to sell, we'll sign the paperwork and then we'll be on the market. I guess that's fine if that's what you want to do, but the reality is if you're working with a client, prepping it for sale and everything else, and then someone else swoops in and is going to charge less commission or whatever, you let them have that opportunity, right? So if you're going to say, hey, just call me when you want to sell and don't worry about it, then you need to be prepared to get left at the altar, right? Now, if you sign this listing agreement well in advance, right, you just do a withhold from MLS and keep it off the MLS until they're ready to go. So I don't know, maybe it's too late now with off-market photos, but I know one of those strategies some people will utilize is we're going to take pictures of your house when it's nice. Well, if you're gonna invest in that listing, right? Why wouldn't you want to make sure that you're gonna have it when the spring comes? So there's nothing that would stop you from saying this contract starts on September 1st, 2025 and runs through, November 2026, like gives you 16 months, 18 months of time by just extending the term to cover whatever the seller's, expectations and plans are. I think a good approach, it's not for everyone, but a good approach to listings is to say, we start working together when this contract gets signed. Then I do a CMA for you and we do a market analysis. Then we kind of go through the property and I talk about, we'll price it and we'll make a plan for marketing and everything else. Why do we give that all away in trying to get the business, as opposed to saying, I have the expertise, I will deliver these services to you in the course of my representation of you, right? Yes.
Just on the consumer's viewpoint, right? They want value.
Sure.
And obviously, we know in this industry, there's some frauds out there that act like they're all that and they're not all that. They don't really even know what they're talking about. How do they know that they're not getting that? Because you haven't shown them quite literally anything. You're saying,
Fair.
after you do this, then I'll show you that.
Right.
Some bum agent might not even know what a CMA is, and they're like, yeah, I'll convince you after you sign this contract, but at that point, they're locked in. So I'm just curious, like on the consumer side, if someone came up to you and said, hey, sign this contract, lock in with me, and then I'll show you what I can do for you. I'm just curious, like,
Well, I mean, partially I'd say I'm writing what if they called me, I'm writing my expertise and someone maybe referred me or whatever. And so the qualifications are already sort of understood,
Determined.
right?
Yep.
So, and again, yeah, if it's your first sale or something else like that, you've never done this before, I think you have a little bit of a different sort of approach where, yeah, you have to maybe earn their value.
And
Yeah.
Sit them, show them value, talk numbers, I
Yeah.
mean.
Now, right,
For
nothing, when I'm saying that, I'm not saying that on certain situations, it's not appropriate to come prepared, to come with comps. And yes, give some of that information up front, but also recognizing that some sellers, not the majority, but some, they're shopping the agents based upon what they want to hear. Right? They want to know, and I would just tell them that if you're talking, and ask them, are you talking to anyone else? Great. I mean, like, if they, by the way, if they're coming and they're trying to tell you your house is worth $1 million, like if they're just trying to get your business by telling you what you want to hear and instead of telling you what you need to hear, like as a consumer, that's what I'd be more concerned about.
Correct.
Right?
Reality
Yeah.
is gonna hit now or later.
The different distinction is before we sign this contract, yes, I'm trying to get your business. So is everybody else. Once we sign this agreement, I owe you the fiduciary duties of obedience, loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accounting, reasonable care. Once we sign this contract, I work for you. And I owe you all those fiduciary duties. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to, I'm going to tell you the truth. But the point is, this contract is what creates that responsibility. Before they sign this contract, I can tell you what the hell I want to say, right? To just get you to, work with me and not anybody else. So it is one of those things where that's part of the service that you're getting through the contract. And I would just, like I say, use this as a tool to explain that's part of the process. Now, as I say that was a preamble to this whole price issue that's in the contract.
I've got a quick question from the chat, if you don't mind. Mark was wondering if there is a maximum time limit on a listing that can be in a withheld status.
No, there is no maximum.
Yep.
And this is more
Total, but I wasn't gonna necessarily get in this. So there's a couple companies, some interesting business entrepreneurs, if you will, that are going out there and signing 30-year listing contracts with people. They're being investigated actively or whatever by the Attorney General's office, but legitimately, this brokerage is giving these people like $500 and saying, you have $500, and whenever you sell, you're selling with us. Now, they're writing a check, they're giving these people $500, so. You know, there's consideration there, and then of course, they're turning around and when they wanna sell. If they remember that company. Then, you know, they go back to them, what's the problem is sometimes it's 10 years later or something and they don't remember that, and then we sign up with them. But, you know, it becomes a bit of an issue, and that pre-existing listing contract is legally valid unless a court of law tells us it's not, right? I say that to say, not a huge fan of a 30-year listing contract, all right? Not my cup of tea, but a couple of years is totally fine. If you think that you're gonna need that, right? I mean, honestly, I've had situations where agents have, for whatever reason, customer service, ethics, morals, guilt, whatever, where they've wanted to write a check and give client the money or something to like pay for a new roof that just, you know, they just felt bad about. With the hope that they will remember that come 7 years later or whatever, when they turn around and sell. I wouldn't wait on hope. If you ever find yourself in that situation, I would have us sign an agreement where they're saying, yeah, you'll get paid back one day. So we can sign a long listing agreement within a realm of reason. Not necessarily, I mean, man, maybe it would be 30 years. I mean, if you're honestly, if someone's writing a check for like $8,000 for a new roof, then yeah, I would support that. But those are the situations where those are those ones that cut so far against the grain. I wouldn't expect any one of you to be doing this on your own without talking to me. But the point is to recognize that just term, it's not just like, oh, I always do 6 months, right? I mean, you can do 6 months if that's the way you want to approach an off chance listing, but, and for a lot of time through COVID times, everything else, 6 months was like a lifetime. We didn't need that opportunity. Today, different story, right?
I personally use dates based on my clients'
Yeah.
circumstances
Yeah.
or situations,
Mhm.
right? You know, if I were to meet with a client right now and they're not wanting to sign till spring, my start date's going to be today. I'm going to withhold it, and I might go into fall of 2026 with it, right?
But yeah,
If
I
I
would
do
also
put
just
them
say like
down.
December 31, 2026,
Right.
like our goal is to sell next year. And if I can't sell it by the end of the year or whatever, then whatever, really, but.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about the withhold form, and I just wanna touch on that and the rules of getting it uploaded within the MLS. Yes, we have the 2 days. I recommend doing it as soon as possible, though. I like to share personal stories if you guys have trained with me. I had a situation where I met with a client on like a Thursday night, and it was an internet lead, signed all the listing paperwork, and something just told me, I think they had told me that they were meeting with someone else. I uploaded it to the MLS and withheld status that night. The other agent had went and met with him the next day. I'm getting a call from an agent from a different brokerage who is like, I need you to release my clients from the listing agreement. And I was like, well, they're not your clients, they're my clients.
Yeah.
And I'm not doing that. So like I actually had the fact that I withheld my listing very quickly, saved my entire listing, right? Because if I wouldn't have withheld it and that agent would have uploaded that first, they would have had more leverage than me, right? It was kind of whoever had it within the MLS. I mean, I had my listing agreement signed first, but I had the leverage being that it was already with.
So you had yours uploaded first, so when they tried to upload it, did something play?
Yeah.
Yeah, so on the MLS level, they would say this address is already under contract, right?
Yeah.
Which is, by the way, how sometimes we've discovered that transaction's already under contract with that 30-year,
List.
Okay.
situation, right?
Yeah.
The MLS keeps track of that data. And we do not have access to any
No.
other brokerages.
They don't have access. to
And
it,
they-
so
and they don't have access to us?
Listing agreement, what I was charging, any of that. I don't know if you can call the MLS, I don't know how.
No,
You might
you-
call the client.
When you turn it in, and if it's already under contract with someone else that hasn't expired or canceled, you'll just get like a bounce back and say and then basically you don't really know anything else about it. But then you go back to the client and say,
Right.
what gives? Like
That's
what's
what
going
I'm
on
thinking,
here?
that she must have called the sellers and then they were like, oh, we signed, figured to that, maybe anyhow, I won't go too much into that, but withhold, you should always get signed. really realistically, just make it part of your listing agreement, because most properties are not ready to be listed within the 48-hour time frame from the time that you sign, right? I mean, like, I have, some of you follow me on social media, I had that fire one, that was an exception, we were ready to go, right? But I would just say, make it a habit to sign the withhold or the coming soon, one or the other should be signed. And so it's either put in withheld status in the MLS right away, or the coming soon status.
So the interesting thing for me coming from, I mean, I'm aware of click contracts and stuff, and I know how it operates, but just kind of getting to know how it affects your,
Business.
approach. Just because when I was a sales manager and broker and was really teaching people how to do this more in a hands-on environment, that was pre-click contracts times. And so my approach was, of course, with like a folder with the listing agreement, seller disclosure, the MLS active input form, but also the withhold form, just sort of having everything so that you could just sort of pick and choose and pulling out of the folder what you would need for a given transaction. You would have well and septic, lead-based, just all the things in format. So by the way, it shows that you're prepared and you know what the hell you're doing, right? But just having that folder to give them the seller property disclosure, to just sort of, obviously the agency disclosure, the whole thing, right? With click contracts, it's maybe just a little bit different in terms of how you create the documents and deliver them to them. But I still wouldn't be opposed to you, especially in a listing presentation, to have that in a prepared paper version, just so that it's something tangible also that the clients can sort of take and look at and, leave with, even if it doesn't actually create the actual contracts that you're going to be using.
One client's over with agency alone.
Yeah.
If I'm like, hey, I have to present this to you, and we met with other agents, well, I'm sorry, that agent's not doing their job.
Yeah.
I value my license
Yeah.
and my career, and I'm not losing that, and then that's like built trust with them, right? So.
Yeah, I think that's so critical, to take, because I do this all the time as an attorney. I forget all the time that people that I'm talking to don't see the world through the lens that I see it.
Sure.
And people are calling us because they need us.
Yeah.
So to be presumptuous to think that they are not like a little baby that knows nothing is a mistake, right? Even the people who will say that they know what they're doing, or they've done, that's how you win. Again, is having that preparation and showing them how transparent and prepared you are through the process. So again, not saying you can't use click contracts for the purposes of your listing paperwork, but I would just be mindful of how vulnerable consumers are when you're, in those situations, and then how reassuring it can be to be, handed something right in a, that's fully well prepared, right? Now, some people like your buddy from college be like, yeah, no, I trust you, just send me the paperwork. Fine, right? But they're the ones, and by the way, if they have a spouse,
Yeah.
he or she may not be on the same page with that. And she's like, I've heard stories about you in college, right? Let's show that value, right? So I mean, anyway.
Let's talk a little bit about price.
Yeah, and then we'll circle back to line 12, but
Oh,
price,
go
yeah,
ahead.
because price is, as we're talking about this is the one where, I know the click contracts, that's why I want to bring that up. With click contracts, you are required when filling this out to put a price, right? So it's a mandatory field by virtue of, that, third-party programs requirements. As an attorney, I would tell you that if the client has not settled on a price yet, you can still could conceivably still create a contract without establishing a price. I'm not saying it's a good idea to do that, but there are situations where like I said before, if you're starting out by saying, let's do we sign this agreement, then I'm gonna do a CME, we're gonna determine your list price. We're kind of talking on both sides of our mouth then, if we're also going to be forcing them to throw a number in here. But again, click contracts would require you to do that. So if we're talking about this price, you could throw in their pie in the sky, highest possible number to start, right? $1 million, right? Whatever. ideally, it's gonna be what their actual price is, what they actually wanna, sell for. Because this price sets the terms later for when we've earned our commission. If we, where am I?
If they didn't sell and you were gonna collect a commission, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so basically the price sets the terms for what happens here in this section, which says that if we produce a buyer who's willing and able to buy at the price and terms of this contract, but the seller refuses to sell, we get paid. So the idea with this is you're setting up front what are the key basic terms besides selling it during our listing agreement, right? Before it expires, but also what's the price and any other terms like we'll allow cash, VA financing, whatever. I mean, I don't see a lot of people filling this out anymore, this section very often.
We're pretty good at it because EXP flagged it all the time.
Yeah.
So I was I was bad at that,
Yeah.
putting the terms on there.
I almost think the way you'd use this is to say what you wouldn't take.
Right,
So like, no contract for deeds.
right.
And then, by the way, if you got a full price offer, but it was for a contract for deed, the seller could rightfully refuse it, right?
Or in my fire one, my only option was cash.
Yeah.
So cash only, no financing. Also for the price for me personally, when I'm going on listings. Again, let's say I'm meeting with them now and we're not listing till the spring. I typically go with 3 different price points, right? Because it can change on once you actually go to the property and you're like, oh, this is nicer than I thought, or oh, this is not quite as nice as I thought. And to Ed's point, will usually go with the highest amount and tell them we're gonna put that in the contract. But come springtime, when we're ready to actually go live, I'm gonna run another market analysis. We're gonna go over those numbers together and we'll establish the price that makes sense for that period of time that we're going on.
So no TBD.
Right.
Well, I don't think click contracts would allow you to do TBD.
But if you were using,
If you were generating this or doing it handwritten. If you did TBD here, I would want you to I could give you some language to put into like the other section or something that just says, seller to fully determine price at a later date, right? And that's fine, but if you do that TBD thing and never follow up with any kind of amendment or anything else, then there is no set price in terms of enforcing the contract against them for not accepting the offer, because we never determined it, right? It'd be the same as.
You're utilizing the team and like, hey, we can market you off market, like. You want that price to be
Yeah.
able to start having those conversations. Otherwise, oh, I've got a 4-bed, 2-bath in Andover. What's it going for?
But the reason why this is here, I mean, there are times where price is a mandatory component of a contract, obviously the purchase agreement being that one. But for purposes of this, it's a way of establishing the minimum standard threshold of when our commission is earned if the seller then, for whatever reason, refuses to sell, right?
So if you use RT seasonal season, we'll get to these, we do need a price because their other systems require a price to get it in Sky Slope and all these other things. So like. Yeah.
It's best to
It's just
set.
best to have a price. If you are in a situation ever where it doesn't make sense, call Ed or myself and let's talk through it. Otherwise, I would say 99.9% of the time, just get a price on there.
Yeah, and you can explain to your client by saying, this is if you get an offer at this price, I've earned my commission, right? Ultimately, and that's even saying that is a little goofy, because if they end up getting an offer for less and they accept it, we earn our commission too, but it's there for that purpose, for establishing that, kind of baseline. 99% of your clients, again, you just say, well, what's your dream price? 675? Okay, I'm gonna write that in here. I don't know if we're gonna get it. We have to put it on the market, we have to see, but that's our goal, right? We'll try to get it, and if I get it for more, awesome. If we don't get that price, we still sell. That's my goal, is to try to get you as close to that number as we can.
Go ahead.
Is it one of those things like if you put it at a lower price, then you can't go above it, or is
No,
it?
you can.
Yeah.
You just, no matter what, if you're withheld,
Yeah.
then before you go live, you do the MLS change form,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And make sure you do that, because I've seen people who, you might sign it, let's say you signed it at 250, you go to sell in the spring, it's COVID, market hit the roof, and now the house could go for 325.
Yeah.
You forget to amend it, now you put it in the MLS.
Yeah.
Now you're changing it upwards, it doesn't look good, so just make sure you've got that stuff figured out.
And-
Go ahead.
Yeah, the
Sorry.
administration fee, I don't see it anywhere.
Oh,
And-
Yeah, this is just the generic, we just pulled the standard listing contract from those.
Oh, it's a.
where in the contract?
Uh-huh.
So in Click, it automatically puts it in. For me, when I'm drafting my own, I put it in the other section.
In the other section?
Yep, yep.
Is there a way to like, well, is is that something that you negotiate or is something like kind of purpose?
So as a team, we require the $6.95 broker admin fee, right? So you as an agent can charge whatever you like and you get whatever you charge above and beyond that.
Right,
Clarification, as a company, we charge, part of our operation is to charge a $695 amount of broker compensation, in addition to the percentage. We don't like that A word,
What do you word?
administrative fee.
Okay.
It's additional commission. It would be the same thing, by the way, as if another again, this is just the economics of how we operate our business here, but if we just said everybody has to add a 0.1 to your commission. So instead of 4, it's 4.1, you know, again, that's just one of the foundational economic components of how we're establishing this business here. It's very much common in this market as well. Some markets don't have broker commission fees, but Minnesota does, and you know, it's just part of our structure.
$6.95, I find many agents charge $8.95, and then that helps cover their TCLC fee.
And one clarification, you guys, I'm sure you know this, but just to make sure, is if your client says, I am not paying that, it is on you guys to eat that cost.
Yeah.
So
commission.
client says no. Also, kind of, going back a little bit to, you're just throwing a price in there. This is like a common sense thing that I was thinking is like saying like, what's your dream price kind of thing, right? Is you have to have that really solid conversation, a foundation that this might change, especially if it's high,
Right.
right? You have to
If
say,
we're at 500 and they're
Yes.
at 675,
Yes.
you have to be.
this is going to change, this is what I'm seeing, lead with data, that kind of thing. Because if the contract says 675 and it's really a 600, you come back and you're like, well, here's what I see. Rapport is gonna go way down because that's what they're planning for in their head. So you have to have that conversation.
Brandon, go ahead.
Why is
Yeah.
the word administrative a bad word?
It goes back a ways, but the kind of general principle is that there was a time where brokerages wanted to say, well, like, this is for document processing fee, or they were trying to attach it to something that didn't really exist, and then it could be construed as like being like a junk fee, whereas if we just call it, it's just part of the commission calculation.
Sure.
Some whole dollars plus, you know, if someone, by the way, wanted to sell and we'll talk about commission, but if you, instead of saying I work for 3%, if you just said, I will sell your house for $10,000, then it would be $10,000 plus $10,695, right? It's just a way of, it's two different types of math, but it's the same concept, right?
You should have that descriptive practice.
Okay.
Yeah, well,
And also, because we're on broker admin fees.
commission.
Oof, that's some, I'm gonna have to work on that. We're talking about the BAC. VA, you know, we don't charge it on buy side. You can still charge them on the sales.
Okay. On the sales side for the buyer?
No, for the listing. If they're selling and buying. You know, and in fact, I feel like this may even have changed recently. VA, you can charge on.
Yes.
I feel like.
You probably can, but at this point in time, it's still like thinking operating policy where we would just be,
Yeah.
we allow. Especially when you have buyers that are doing zero down,
Yeah.
VA buyers. They don't necessarily have the 695, so as a policy, broker commission. Can be exempt,
Buy side for a VA.
or
not-
potentially for like new construction, like a, you know, builder type of trade deal, or, you know. anyway.
I got the chat really quick, sorry. And it was a good one. She said, I always set expectations with my sellers up front that we will revisit the price the week before going on the market. I actually do the same thing. I always set that expectation. Hey, we're gonna watch the market really closely. This matters because if somebody in your neighborhood pops up at a certain price point, it's gonna affect it. So keeping that in mind as well.
And, oh, go
Did you
ahead.
see that be kind of in all of these changes, did you see that getting revised, like this is a commission? This is part of your commission.
Well, I think it is part of the commission and I apologize that this is, I didn't have Cassie pull up an example of one of her actual client transactions, where it would have been embedded in there the correct way, because I didn't want to be, broadcasting a client's private information. So we just pulled up a generic auto-populated association realtors listing agreement form. I wasn't prepared to talk about it today, but I will be creating a new exclusive listing agreement just for us, which will include and make the broker commission. It'll be
Embedded.
embedded right in here, so it's all right there. You don't have to write it in separately, right? It's all gonna be here. But the reality is why I'm making the new form is I'm getting rid of all this crap, right? And I wanted to talk about this and what it is first before I explain the next part about this. And also, I mean, just timing wise, I mean, I want to maybe have that ready to go sooner rather than later, but because we have to get into Click and everything else, and I want to teach on this first. Like I say, I want to get there. So, and because where we're at right now, I assume we'll, not tons and tons of listings going active right now, but preparing for spring market 2026, right? That's the end goal, to be ready and fully script practiced and everything for that, right? So rolling out a new form, I know, is a lot more than me just giving you the form. It's explaining it, teaching it, learning it,
And putting it in.
and then using it, right?
So I want to be
But the stuff we're talking about here today.
20-minute, yeah. Can we kind of go to some of the meats and bones?
Yeah, I just wanna, two quick things, I just
Oh, I
want,
wanna
as I was
go
explaining
these
this,
ones.
yeah, I'll go there. Is when I talk about enforcing this. And this is why I'm here, but also we're not. This doesn't mean that we're just like actively just going out and suing our clients all the time. It gives us the ability. Right? To potentially enforce this, but at the same time, if we're in the middle of a transaction, someone dies or something. We're gonna be like, okay. Take care of your life and we'll kind of come back to us, right? It doesn't mean we will automatically enforce this. I say that because I've had situations where agents wanted to enforce it. I was like, are you sure about this? And then they say yes, so I send a demand letter or threaten the clients, and then the clients, because we threatened to sue them, suddenly don't like their agent anymore. And the agent is just baffled. Why would they be upset? All I'm doing is trying to enforce my contract. And it's like, suing someone is like stabbing them. It's a very intimate, visceral experience, right? And you feel it as it happens to you. So I would tell you, just because we have it doesn't mean we're gonna use it all the time.
I have seen agents use this though, where they've signed a contract and then the seller's visible,
Yeah.
right? And then they're like, what the hell? And then enforced it that way.
Other couple quick things. This one always gets overlooked. I can't remember if it used to be bold or at some brokerages they will bold it, but this can only be canceled by mutual written agreement of the parties is something to just remember that it's there. I don't know you have to go over that, but when a client says, I want to fire you, you can be like, you don't get to just fire me. This is a contract. We have to agree together to cancel this. Or more importantly, this is a contract between the seller and the broker. Pemberton Real Estate. So you can also say, look, if you want to fire me or whatever, if you're not happy with my services, I would like you to, talk to my broker. I'd like you to talk to my general counsel or whatever, because the contract is ultimately, canceling it is kind of above my pay grade, right? And that'll be an opportunity for us to try to either salvage the relationship or correct whatever the problem is. Try to, again, but if you put in here, seller can cancel at any time, then you are overriding this. You're giving them the ability to fire you. And I've seen that on buses before. Agents team, I remember I used to drive by it all the time after I dropped my kids off at daycare going to work. And it was like, I would be behind this bus and it just said like, hire us. Feel free to cancel at any time. Right on the bus bench. I was like, okay, you got to live with that. If that's what you're gonna, that's what you're gonna give them, is that out? We have to honor that. Okay, so, okay. Here's what I want to say about this. If you going through this, people always say like, what does this all mean? And we could go over what VOWs are. I think we all know what the internet is, but like, what do these different things mean? If you answer yes to everything, the listings will go on all the portals. Realtor, Zillow, the whole thing. Realtor.com is a non-IDX. Again, like one of these is, I can't remember which one is which, but one of them is Realtor.com, the other one is Zillow. And if you have a client who doesn't want to go on the portals, doesn't want to go on the MLS, wants to be old school, newspaper print only, or whatever. I mean, if you have Kevin Garnett or you're listening in professional NBA players' house and they don't want to go on the MLS, theoretically, we can check no to all of those boxes. It wouldn't feed into any of the data aggregators. It wouldn't go there, and you could, I don't know, sell it. Take out a plane and fly skywriting. I don't know what you would do, but that's what answering yes says. It goes on the internet and everywhere. Answering no to any of them or all of them means it's not being fed to specific corners of the interweb.
People,
Yeah, sorry, the chat is saying it's really hard to see, I'm sorry to
Oh.
interrupt. It's hard to see what line you are pointing at. So
oh,
if you could throw out the numbers, otherwise I can go
Okay.
up there and highlight what your
Okay.
number you're talking about.
I wanted to
Sorry,
specifically
Cass.
talk about option 2 and 3, or keep going down. So now I can't see the line. Option 3 and option 4, I've seen marked no a lot by agents, like particularly about the automated valuation, then it can't go on Zillow.
Right.
So you're not gonna check this and then assume that the Zestimate's not gonna show and it's still gonna be on Zillow. You're eliminating yourself from Zillow.
Yeah.
Same
with
with
the
comments. Cause like, then technically you're not even supposed to put it on Facebook. Why? Because people can comment on that. So these, as a general
POW is what Realtor.com for whatever reason doesn't get their data through the IDX feed. They get it through as a VOW. So checking no on this one means it's not going to be on Realtor.com, basically. So it's like,
thumb should just be that they're all marked yes. Otherwise you are going to get into,
but there are others as well, right? My point is, if you check any of these no, then it's not going to feed to certain corners of the internet where people do see listings. So, and then of course the question is, if you're checking any of these boxes no, then it sounds like you got a problem with some component of the internet. Let's talk about that.
I feel like if you have checking no, you haven't, either you don't understand them properly or you haven't explained them to your client properly, right? Especially the comments one, because I always tell my clients, like, we monitor it. Because they're like, I don't want someone to go through my open house and then start making negative comments about me online. We have the ability to like delete those.
Yeah.
So. Did someone have a hand up? I thought.
Yeah, I think you go in there. I have a situation right now.
This one?
They wanna list.
Yeah.
and Have the listing agreement ready, but they wanna list for leasers
Sure.
for a period of time.
Yes, so this specific question, or this specific language is really designed, why it was put in there is when it's already listed for lease, either independently by the seller or potentially with another brokerage. Right? That's what this is asking for. They're asking the seller, have you listed this for sale with someone else? If your client
Please.
wants it to list it for lease as well as listing it for sale, you'll do a listing contract for sale and a listing contract for lease, right? But so some people think that, that if I check this box, yes, I can also list it
That's
for
right.
lease. That's not what this is saying,
Okay.
right? Because this then doesn't talk about compensation for that lease at all, right? But this is really more asking, because as an agent, our exclusive right to represent in the sale is limited to the universe of selling the property. You could theoretically have someone sign a entirely separate listing agreement for leasing with another brokerage. And so this is just trying to get at that. And then this one says seller may or may not list it, meaning can they
Also listed.
also list it for lease while we're doing this, right? Probably just more of a conversation started like, how desperate are you to get out from under this property, right? And again, if you want to list it for lease, I can help you with that, right? I can, but also if you were already actively trying to do that with someone else, that's cool too, you just need to tell me, right? Make sense?
Yeah. In the case that the property get leased before it gets sold, what happened then? The contract void?
Well, you can
Well-
keep your listing contract, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
But again, if they sign, well, let's say you sign a 1 year lease, or I'm sorry, 1 year listing agreement. You're listing it for a couple months and then they sign a 1 year lease, right? The lease is gonna run out before, after, the lease expires after your listing contract runs out first, right? You know, these are situations where if someone's telling me, yeah, they're actively looking to lease it with, and maybe have someone else, oh shoot, where am I? Someone else find the tenant, and cause maybe you're saying, I don't wanna deal with that, cause I don't want, the compensation for a lease isn't great, right? That's fine, but I would also just say like, well, what happens if they do sign a short lease? Are they still gonna wanna try to sell? Or, you know, once they get it under contract for a lease, you can still sell it, right? Maybe even that's a better scenario for finding an investor buyer, cause it's already subject to a lease, so I mean, you know. These are just sort of ongoing conversations, and the longer a term you have, if you have a 2 year contract and it's only a 1 year lease, you're still in a position to keep that listing, right? Rare that that's gonna come up, right? Most people don't wanna touch that, right? Most sellers just wanna sell. Cause if they, by the way, they don't sell and don't get out from under their current mortgage, they're not gonna qualify for the next one. So, seller obligation, this is a bunch of gobbledygook that's, just means, that seller will,
really like that legal term, gobbledygook.
yeah,
Nice.
yeah,
Use it for this.
Yeah.
we're authorized to access the property, to allow other people to access the property. Duplicate keys, I mean, I guess we're authorized to do it, I don't know anyone's doing that, right? But again, just kind of the standard language of generally what we're authorized to do, what I really wanted to, they also give us a license to use content that they give us, right? So if they take pictures, I know that sellers don't normally do that, but if they gave us pictures, we can use that. But typically, we're the ones who are creating and paying for that content, so we're usually not getting content from the seller, but it's there just in case.
Let's say you have to duplicate a key, they require a paper, is that what you present? Say they gave me authorization to.
Yeah.
Duplicate this.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But usually we're just taking the key and putting it in the lockbox, we don't necessarily have to duplicate it, but yeah, I
But in
mean,
the case, I know places that you can't duplicate it without an authorization, that you can duplicate a house key.
yeah,
Oh, I haven't had a house key in 10 years, so I have no idea.
yeah, one of the things that I would mention. Seller understands that prospective buyers and others authorized to access the property may record the property by photograph, video, or other medium while accessing the property. So the association slid that in a couple of years ago. But I would just say this, just because that's in there does not mean that other people's listings or homes are your canvas for recording your content. Right.
Whole topic for another day, because I know a lot of
Yes.
us do that. in
Whole topic for
showings,
another day.
And I feel like that is a topic we need to
Okay.
discuss.
But my point is, when people saw that there, and I know that there were like coaches that were like, oh, just go there and do showings and make content and do all these things. And yeah, that's a great way to generate eyeballs and your marketing and everything else. But if you just go and do that and you set up a showing without, bringing an actual client, you don't have any actually interested, you're just going in there to look at this or to make fun of their wallpaper and stuff. You are making the assumption that they didn't strike that out, first of all. Because people do strike stuff out of the contracts all the time, number one, and number two, I mean, professionalism, how would you want someone in your home behaving, that type of stuff? My point is, just because something like that is there, doesn't mean we don't follow the golden rule at all times, which is we treat it like we would want our house to be treated, right? So, little food for thought. I'm not saying that if you're not allowed to do like walkthrough, and if you're doing a virtual showing for a client who's over like in New York or something, and they just want to see the property and you're FaceTiming them, you can do that, right? Little bit different than going and using someone else's house to be your content studio, right? No? Okay. All right, compensation.
That was like.
Oh, God. COVID was, yeah.
Yeah.
So here's the, let's, again, it's talking about this section, because, and just know that the listing agreement has been this way for many years, right? And when the NAR settlement happened, there was a lot of resistance to just immediately embrace change. There's a lot of fear around it. We're a year and a half into this and everyone's fine, right? We made it. I have no idea if there will ever be an actual full-blown, rectification of this at the Association of Realtors level on this form. They give us the forms, we can use them. There are forms that we'll always use, like the purchase agreement, we can't change, because we use that with other agents in a transaction. But we can modify this for internal use if we want to, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Just because I don't think that this form really does a great job of explaining what cooperative compensation is and giving you all the right tools to use it, right? To start with, because it starts off by talking about total broker compensation. Now, why? Well, before the NAR change, it was very common for a listing broker to say, I'm going to charge 6% or some number like that. Some number. And then some amount of that I'm going to be paying out to a buyer's broker, because that's what we do. That's how we roll. And most consumers are like, okay, yeah, cool, whatever. But NAR settlement happened, and now the listing broker, the amount of compensation that gets paid to the buyer's broker has to be consistent with what's in their buyer rep agreement, right? Yeah. And we put that into the purchase agreement and just put it all up front so everyone knows, right? But so the idea here, that what's kind of the premise that's off here is you're doing the math by making the assumption that you know what the buyer agent how are we supposed to offer compensation? Because we can't put an MLS anymore, so what are we going to do? How would you offer compensation, right? And so there's a sort of a, first of all, what I would like you all to do until this form changes from the immediate future until now, shall not. Always. Because we, as the listing broker, really can't offer the compensation anymore anyway. And since we have a fiduciary duty to our clients, our sellers, to try to maximize their payout, right? Why would we be offering money out without knowing what the buyer agent is going to ask for? So that call, hey, are you offering compensation? I wish it would stop, right? Our response is, sure, put it in the purchase agreement. I'm not offering it, but the seller may pay it, but you got to put it in the purchase agreement. And if they say, hey, well, what are you paying out? I would say, what's in your buyer rep agreement? And then what kind of offer are you going to be writing? And when the buyer's agent inevitably says, well, I'm not telling you that, then I'm not telling you either what we're offering. But what I will tell you is, we're not opposed to it, but you make the first move, right? We don't volunteer that information. Just like we do with seller paid closing costs, right? Will your seller pay closing costs? Yeah, maybe. But it depends on what your offer is. You write 20% below ask and ask for seller paid closing costs. I mean, my seller's probably not going to take that offer. But if you write a full price or maybe even above asking price offer so that it nets out like a full price offer, then yeah, why the hell wouldn't we take that, right? But we're not going to have that preliminary discussion before you've even presented the offer. So that's why we don't do that's why we are checking this box shall not, because we're not offering it. So ideally right now, what this should say and what the new form is gonna say is just say listing broker compensation, and it's just gonna say, this is our fee for selling your property. I'm just gonna make up a number. 3.5%. I just made it up. But that's my fee for selling your property. And then any cooperative compensation that the buyer may ask for is gonna be in addition to that, and this whole section is gonna be gone. Right, and be replaced with something a little bit different.
Zoom is not
Not sharing it.
to see, it's
Alright.
the screen share, it's okay, actually, we only have 4 minutes left.
Okay, I will do a full, everyone on Zoom, I'm good, this is just, I was really didn't want to get bogged down too much on this section. So I apologize, I will do a full training on just this section and the new form that's coming. When it's all ready to go, and
I think most of you all are already operating.
the awesome thing about coming here is knowing that you are all doing this correctly already,
Right,
right?
right.
I didn't have to convince you all to do this like I did at my last job, right? Yeah.
I need a lot of training on this.
Okay, well, come find us afterwards, if you
Yeah.
like, but ultimately, we as company policy don't want to be putting any buyer broker commission in the listing agreement, period, only your commission, and the rest is negotiable at the time of an offer on line 406 of the meeting.
I will, maybe to wrap this up, just a few other things, which are just kind of boilerplate that you wouldn't necessarily have to know to go through. But you have to always, everyone has to fill this in, if within blank number of days, not to exceed six months, you can have a protected client list. One of the things I'd like to do is just make it automatically populate to be 180 days, because that's how many days you get automatically. But I'm gonna tell you all that this language is pretty much worthless.
Well, unless you provide them the list, right, and then.
Yes, but if you provide a protected client list, like let's say this, you try to sell their house during the whole term, you can't. But here's all the buyers that were interested, and you give them that list. If within those 180 days, that a buyer, one of those buyers goes straight to the seller and says, hey, let's screw over your realtor, let's put a deal together, we earned our commission. That never happens. Do you know why it never happens? Because all they have to do is sign a new listing contract with a new broker, and our protected buyer list goes away completely. So if they can read, they would be like, hey, let's go hire a broker for $1. And we can screw over everybody, right?
But what
Protected
this does,
client list.
I mean, what I feel like this protects you as the agent from, and I explain this to my clients when I'm at the table with them talking about the listing agreement, is this protects me so that you don't have someone who came through an open house and then knocks on your door Tuesday night and says, let's cut your realtor out and work together.
Yeah.
This protects me from that.
I would say if you have many, many, many months left of your listing agreement, we don't ever have to worry about this. The only time that we're really worried about this is when you're coming up on the end of your listing contract and your seller, for whatever reason, doesn't want to re-up with you. And if you find yourself in that situation, call me and we can talk through different strategies. Okay, how do we, transition this? If you've got like a couple weeks left in your listing agreement and they're thinking about going elsewhere, you can be like, hey, let me help you find your next realtor. If it's not going to be me, because then, by the way, we can negotiate a referral fee with that replacement agent and still get paid something for our trouble, right? Let's be honest about it. If it doesn't work out with me, that's okay. Let me help you find the next guy. Yeah. Right? But that's there. You can't put more than 180 days in there. You could put less. That's why it's a term that you can fill in, but I guess it's not that difficult. I think probably in quick contract, it says, how many days for your protected buyer list? Not more than 180, and everyone probably just says 180, right? But it really, it's probably not worth the time. If you're in Wisconsin, by the way, total opposite over there. Protected buyer lists and protected property lists are enforceable. Very different across the board.
Wisconsin's just very different.
So seller acknowledges they might be required to pay additional closing costs, which may effectively reduce the proceeds from the sale. In our new form, there's going to be a further explanation here talking about that cooperative compensation paid to the other broker could also reduce the proceeds from the sale. So that's where that's going to slide in there, but it's not there right now. Closing services, they get to choose if they want us to help or not. Find that, like in the one deal, this is my rant, one deal for one company resulted in them having to pay like a small amount of money because of a FERPTA situation that happened one time. And as a result, we have this much language in all of our damn contracts, and you have to do a checkbox because of one freaking thing that happened. By the way, when that happened, FERPTA had been a statute for like 40 years before that. So one time, and I'm just ranting, but super frustrating that the association sometimes just overreacts to like a one-off scenario and creates this thing, right?
Can you tell he was on the forums committee?
Yeah, and then I quit out of protest, and now I'm going back because I'm a masochist, I guess, or something. Yeah. A foreign person under FERPTA is not just a foreign person. Right? So we're not racially profiling. We're not checking people's accents at the door, right? A foreign person under FERPTA is a non-resident alien individual, starting right there. So if they are a resident, meaning they live here, they're not a foreign person. Period, full stop. Non-resident alien mean, and if they're here on a green card or any type of actual qualifications to be here in the United States, even though they're not a citizen, they're fine. If they're a citizen, they've been naturalized citizen, they're not a foreign person. Foreign corporation, foreign partnership, foreign trust, foreign estate, or someone who lives overseas but owns real estate here. That would be potentially a FERPTA seller. So chances are, if you're physically talking with someone, they're almost certainly not a FERPTA seller, but they could be if they're like here illegally or their visa expired or something else, or they're just here visiting, like looking at all their holdings of real estate. But the idea here, number one, is a foreign person for FERPTA standpoint gets into a lot more detail right off the cuff. But we do want to know if they're a FERPTA seller, because then that could impact their transaction and tax withholdings or whatever else. But it's already a rarity, not common. There's other places where this could also be disclosed, like the seller disclosure and the purchase agreement. So I don't know why we have to go over this a million different times, but I just want to, kind of explain that and recognize that it's a weird conversation to have with someone. Be like, you sure you're not a FERPTA seller? Because
It's not our duty to
Yeah.
release it.
Yeah.
Like-
Yeah, but then you're asking them like, well, I don't know, am I a FERPTA seller? And I think the answer is, well, if you're a citizen, do you hear of it on a green card or something else where you have a, license or authorization to be here in this country? Then they're not a FERPTA seller, right? Make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We're over time.
Overtime. So wrap this up real quick. Couple of just random things.
Yeah.
Our agreement, even though we set a long term, it ends the second we sell their house.
Yeah.
Which is fine if that's what we want to have happen first, but if you have a investor who wants to buy multiple properties this year, then we would want to strike this and keep that thing going, right? So just remember that the association put this in there to just say, well, when we close, we're done, unless you don't want that to happen, right? Entire agreement, electronic signatures, consistent for communication. Yeah, pretty much. That's more or less everything. And then I would just remind everyone again, wire fraud, but this is a whole nother conversation for another day. We'll end now, but if people have more questions, people on the Zoom, your questions, just call me. I got nothing but time. I'm happy to talk about it, but for everyone in this room, let's talk about this stuff. Thank you.
On that topic of the paper,
Hey,
it's just here.
Yeah.
Right now,
I am.
they're not getting deported, but they
I'll
have
have
to
to
be
figure out.
Okay,
They can't go parking until they fix their status.
sure.
That make them a talking.
Yeah, so if they're facing the risk of deportation,
Yeah.
then they very well could be. There's still you can send you, there's like a checklist that they can move, right by the IRS, so, but it's,
Kind of a weird
it's a weird situation.
situation. They have to look for a year until they fix their status.